Hi, I'm your host, Barbie Romero, the Director of Event Programming at MediaPost. Welcome to our Brand Insider Series Backstage exclusive. This is your chance to ask our past brand insiders what's on your mind. Today, our spotlight is on John Acosta, Senior Director of Brand and Product Marketing from Hertz. Welcome, John.
Hi, thanks for having me. A great opportunity and appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. We had a lot of questions submitted for you. And the first one we have is about travelers and, how they're going from dreaming to planning. How do you identify the signals of when someone's ready to actually plan the trip?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really think it's that shift comes from about being inspired and then inspiration into getting into control, right? So I think time gets a lot more specific, right? You're starting to figure out dates and as well as duration of the trip.
Mhm.
The searches start to get more detailed, right? So at least I'll speak from a rental car standpoint. You're thinking about the car types and what other things that you need, within that. And then I think overall that behavior shifts towards actually validating everything that you're planning, right? So you start looking at reviews or comparisons or other things. So, I really don't think it's a funnel step, but I think it's more of a continual shift in your mindset, right? You're thinking about what was originally possibility to now it's control. This is a great question because I'm literally leaving for Japan this weekend and went through this whole exact process and thinking about that. So it definitely really resonated with me. And I just went through and thought about, my gosh, how much more detailed and confirmed I had to get throughout that process. So I really think it starts to narrow in and get very detailed.
Yeah, nice. Oh, Japan, that sounds like a lovely time. So I hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
Then the next question is about OTAs, and a lot of customers they'll go on those platforms, and that's where they'll first see Hertz. What is a way to signal the brand experience for Hertz on a third-party page, or does it really begin when they're actually at the Hertz location about to get the car?
No, I think again, another really great question. And, the OTAs are important, partnership of ours, right? As we continue to expand distribution, throughout all channels. But, I think the idea of owning the customer on OTAs, you know, it's not really the right frame per se, because I think we don't own, but we have to make sure that we imprint,
Mhm.
right? And make sure that the things that we attribute on that platform about the Hertz brand are confidence, clarity, consistency. And then you continue to differentiate that through experience and not just price. So I guess the way I would look at it is, the OTA is a handshake from that platform
Mhm.
to us. And then I think that experience, once they pick up the car and start renting, that's where the relationship
Mhm.
begins, and eventually, if they aren't in our loyalty program, they join loyalty, become a member and things of that nature. So we have a very, very strong relationship, in terms of how that happens. But I think that, there is a handoff that's really important. And then I think that's where we have more control in that customer experience.
So you already answered part of the next question about maintaining a consistent brand experience across OTA, social, and direct booking. But if you wanted to get into how do you maintain that through social and direct booking, we can talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that whole idea about consistency is just the same message everywhere, right? And so you really have to anchor on things like, what's your core promise? What are the expectations on the experience, as well as the emotional tone. I think from a channel standpoint, social serves as the inspirational lever. I think when you get to OTA, you really got to be able to convert and,
Hmm.
and really have confidence in that as they come into our brand and franchise. And then eventually, when they become a direct customer and not, shopping with OTA, but they become direct because they are in our loyalty program or anything else, that's where the relationship, really starts to develop and begin. So,
Hmm.
I think that consistency has to happen though with shared intent on both platforms, OTA as well as when they come on our side. So the execution isn't necessarily identical, but they are very symbiotic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And a lot of the times when people go to these OTAs, they'll be very price driven. A lot of these decisions really comes down to price. So how do you build a brand that's worth paying a premium for?
Yeah, again a great question. Just because when I think of the Hertz brand, we very much over 100 years history position ourselves as a premium brand.
Mm.
But I think when you're talking price, you really have to win on certainty, right? I think price wins when everything starts to feel the same and everything else, but premium wins when that experience is predictable, right? I think sometimes on the price side, and we have this for some other brands, that might not feel as predictable. There's a little bit more risk,
Mhm.
in terms of, is the car clean? Is it going to come back in a timely age? And I think it's all always associated with lower price,
Right.
versus if you're paying a higher price. But I think that on the premium side, if that experience is predictable, right, the process is effortless, right? And I think overall, it's not about, why pay more, but it's more about risking less. And I think when you think about that, when you can engage with a brand like Hertz that has such high brand loyalty, our customers and our members really understand that. And that's why they keep coming back. And that's why they, are elevated in how they are perceived, in terms of how much they rent with us.
Yeah, that's great. And do you have any advice for other marketers that are trying to build brand love in categories that are a lot of times based on price comparison?
Yeah, it's a again, I think I live it every day in the rental car category and industry, which is very, you know, for sometimes it can be perceived as transactional and price driven. But I think the big thing here is, don't fight price per se, but you just got to continue to transcend it, right? And so you got to make sure that whatever value you have as a brand, customers can see it, right? And I think that we get into this mindset because there's so much, in terms of getting the booking, making sure it converts, everything else, that we just don't design for the conversion, but design for the memory, right? And be consistent where that matters. And so I wanted to bring up, I mentioned this in some past interviews about our Gold Squad, where we had golden retrievers intercepting customers at rental car facilities at various airports. And I think that that emotional lever is so important, especially when you bring surprise and delight and joy to weary travelers. That's what creates that emotional connection, right? And I think that people don't love transactions, but they remember experiences, right? And I think that is the key aspect of being able to get loyalty and intent, especially in what is perceived as a very transactional, industry. And so that's really, really important to us. This whole idea of humanizing the brand, and making it much more than just a rental car that you rent, that helps you get from A to B. That's the last thing that's thought of during the travel planning process, but one of mobility, right? Where we help make sure that those memories are empowered through our part in the journey.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love that you guys had golden retrievers. That's really awesome. So, are you ready for some rapid fire questions? Remember, quick answers
Yeah,
only. I don't know if this is.
absolutely. Fire
I
away.
don't know if you're renting a car in Japan, but what is your favorite go-to car rental when you're on vacation?
It's funny. It depends on the trip. I'll usually upgrade wherever I
Hmm.
can. The car is definitely part of the experience. But I will say this: I'm a car guy, right? So I love to rent everything. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter class, style, or anything else because I'm so intrigued about understanding, just ergonomics, electronics, all of these things that make that experience in a car. One of my other responsibilities is OEM marketing. So I work with all of our car manufacturers on different co-op and marketing programs. And so as a car guy, it's like a dream gig. Part of my job is to be able to do that. But in terms of cars, I'm very agnostic because I really want to understand, all the brands and experience them and really understand from a consumer point of view, what makes them different. So I think that's more, I guess I bleed some of my professional side into it, but as someone that has a passion for cars overall and the personal side, it really blurs.
That's awesome. Yeah, get to try everything. That does sound like a
Yeah.
dream job. And since you work at Hertz, actually, the next question is: do you have any insider advice for people that are booking on Hertz that wants that seamless experience? Is it like some kind of tips that you have before, like when they're in that dream phase, or maybe when they're picking up the car?
Yeah, I'd say this, when you think about Hertz and everything else, and you're going through that, book for your needs, not for just
Hmm.
price. And I think the other big thing is use the digital tools that we have, to skip friction. So things like, online check-in, skip the counter, everything else. And so, not that we want to eliminate that human experience, at the counter or anything else, but we also understand that, our consumers are on the go and time is valuable and all of those things. And any way that you can, eliminate friction, eliminate long lines, waits, other things, I think it just creates an overall, better experience. I guess the best way to say it is the best experience, especially in our category, is just the one that works, right? And I think that, when it's simple and easy and you don't have to think about it, that's when the magic really
Yeah,
happens.
definitely. I've been there where you're like you did like an 8-hour flight and now you have to wait online. So that's
Yes,
definitely a good tip to have for the future.
exactly.
And then the last one is there like a brand or a campaign that you admire that you think is doing great work?
Oh, I was so excited about this question when it came because there's a campaign right now that I've absolutely been obsessed with. So just stick with me for 1 second because it's a little niche, but there is a EDM artist, John Summit. I don't know if you've seen him. He released an album last week, but there's a really really funny story. He's one of the largest, and biggest, most popular EDM DJs out there. But he went to my alma mater, University of Illinois, and he came out with a degree in accounting. And so when he first got in the workforce, he was a CPA and he was moonlighting at night, doing DJ sets and everything else. And now he's become this, unbelievably world renowned, DJ and everything else. But the cool thing about his campaign for his latest album that just came out was he really leaned into his background as an accountant and other things. And so prior to the release of his album, which released on tax day on April 15th last week, for a few weeks prior, he was releasing a new single every Wednesday, and he partnered with LinkedIn to really lean into this idea of this fake company called Summit CPAs. And they actually had a great partnership and they were DMing CPAs in the LinkedIn platform to come to a secret DJ set, right? That was in an office where he was dressed up like an accountant and everything else. And so I think this idea of creating buzz and doing it in a digitally native way, but with experiential things,
Mhm.
but were super authentic to who he was. I mean, it just blew up like crazy all over social. It was so clever and unique and just, you know, brilliant that came out of nowhere, but was very, very authentic to him.
Mhm.
That I think that it really showed me, creativity can come in lots of different ways. It doesn't just have to be big splashy campaigns with lots of giant media budgets. But I think in that aspect, it really stuck out to me was just the authenticity of who he
Mhm.
was and how that came about was just really, really clever.
That's awesome. I was gonna say, did he do it on tax day? You answered the question. He did do it on tax day.
I know. It's so crazy. Like, who would do anything on tax day other than, you see promos to incite you to get your taxes done. But I thought it was really, really
That's
clever.
really cool. Well, John, thanks so much for
Yeah,
joining us and answering all of our questions.
absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really, really enjoyed it. And to everyone out there, just wish you the best of luck as you continue to grow your brands.
Thank you. And thanks to you guys, to the audience, for tuning in. If you have any questions yourself or want to be on the hotspot, contact me at Barbie@mediapost.com. Take care.